There is new reaction to the scheduled release of a tell-all book about the top-secret mission to kill Osama bin Laden. The book is called No Easy Day, and it is set to be released on September the 11th. The account, written by a retired now Navy SEAL who was part of that SEAL Team 6 raid that took out the world's most wanted terrorists. Right now, the new book raises some concerns, though, at the Pentagon over whether or not it will include classified information. But you probably remember that this discussion goes back further to when those sensitive details of that mission started to really pour out just the day after. And then speculation started to swirl as to why that would be, because everyone in the room agreed that the details of that mission needed to remain top secret. And yet it all started to unfold very quickly afterwards. And some critics pointed to the White House even as being the source, perhaps, of those leaks, claiming that it meant to boost the president's political standing and give him credit, which was due in many ways. But the details and the releasing of them, a lot of concern. So now this book's planned release brings new attention to that big question about where the leaks started from in the first place. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Bill Cowan of the U.S. Marine Corps is a Fox News military analyst. Colonel Cowan, good to see you. Welcome back here. Welcome to America Live.
Nice to be with you. Thanks, Martha. Nice to be with you.
You know what? I've read through some of what you've said about this, and you feel very strongly about all of this. And let's sort of start where, because once these details began to pour out right after the bin Laden raid, the cat was sort of out of the bag, so to speak, and that may be what has allowed this Navy SEAL to begin this conversation and to write this book in the first place, right?
Well, that's true, Martha, and I think a lot of us that come out of that special ops or intelligence community, particularly the really specialty organizations like SEAL Team 6, take exception to people out there talking about things that they shouldn't be talking about. You know, historically, SEAL Team 6, Delta Force, some of the other specialty units out there have been working for years on behalf of the United States government, missions overseas, men and women serving. And historically, none of them have ever had anything to say in print. So it's a little bit disconcerting. We haven't seen this book yet. We don't know what he has to say. Maybe it's only a 10 or 15-page book, but maybe it's hundreds of pages. And he says he wants to talk about the difficulties families go through. There's a lot of books already doing that. He wants to talk about the difficulty that the SEALs or the soldiers themselves go through. A lot of books out there already in that. It's going to be hard to tell what he uses as filler to make this story interesting, and it's hard to conceive that there won't be some things divulged that should not be divulged.
Yeah, I mean, we know, according to the reports, and he's written this under a pseudonym, but that he was one of the first people into that room where bin Laden was, and that he was there when bin Laden was shot and when he was killed. So he certainly is privy to a lot of the intelligence of this raid. But I want to go back to, it seems to me that your outrage really centers mostly on why we're having this conversation in the first place, and those details that began to come out after that picture we saw in the Situation Room and after this whole thing began to be known.
Martha, you know, there was so much information that's put out there, not only about the bin Laden raid, and we can speak about that for a second, also about Stuxnet, which was the joint effort we had with the Israelis to go after the Iranian nuclear program, about the operation in Yemen, where we were getting that terrorist, the purported terrorist that was going to take a bomb on an airplane. Those are three prime examples of information being leaked that should not be leaked and which damages national security. And I say damages in a number of ways. One is, people need to remember it's not just al-Qaeda or Iran that we're worried about learning things. The Russians and the Chinese are not our friends in all of this stuff. They carefully pay attention to everything out there. I'll cite quickly this SEAL, whose real name is now out there. You can be sure everybody, all of our enemies, were looking to find out who his friends were on Facebook, because you try to put this linkage together of who people are associated with. So you have this overall problem of information getting out there, very sophisticated bad guys using it to do things, and you always step back and say, what's the motivation? And Martha, most people who are in very sensitive positions, who run sensitive operations or have access to them, are polygraphed on a routine basis. They're polygraphed to make sure they're not divulging information. In the White House, at the highest levels of the administration, people are not polygraphed. They're given access to that information by virtue of their positions. And therefore, it comes to reason that most of these leaks indeed are coming out of the White House, and the motivation is to keep this administration in power.
Well, we know that the early New York Times reports that came out cited senior administration officials as being the source of the information. But the administration, as you well know, has said that they did not leak any of this information. Does this go anywhere from here? I mean, this conversation, does it lead to some of those levels, do you think?
Well, Martha, you know, there's an investigation ongoing by the FBI. I don't think it's going to be any conclusions will be reached before the election by any means. It may not be for quite a long time, and who knows what will happen if they find those who did it. But, you know, it's like any good attorney. Go find what the motive is for somebody to be talking about things they're not supposed to be talking about, or doing things that they're not supposed to be doing. Find out what the motivation is and peel it back from there. And the motivation for somebody in the intelligence or special operations community, particularly those with access to very private, very sensitive information, their motivation is to always be quiet for years and years and years and many years thereafter. It's not in our DNA. Those of us who have done these kinds of operations, it's not in our DNA to talk about them. So I would say in the case of the SEAL, it remains to be seen what he has to say about the bin Laden raid. I think it's going to be a little bit unfortunate. It is unfortunate that he wrote that book. And I think in terms of the administration, I hope that some good investigation ferrets him out. Martha, one thing quickly, you know, somebody in that White House, in my judgment, somebody in that White House or in that administration is going home every night to have dinner with his family or going out every night with his friends to happy hour. But in a Pakistani prison, there's a doctor who's been sentenced to 33 years in jail. His crime? Supporting us to ensure that bin Laden was in that compound so that the president could make the decision with good basis to strike that compound.
Wow. And that's a powerful point. And you're referring, of course, to the doctor who tried to get DNA, tried to get some positive identification on bin Laden in order to target that house so that our Navy SEALs would know exactly where to go. And it is striking that we can even sit here and talk about that, and that man is in prison for 33 years for having helped us with that mission. A huge story that has fallen in some ways under the radar. Colonel Cowan, thank you so much for being here and for speaking out on this.
Thanks, Martha.
I hope it gets more attention. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.